financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry Lutz, and guess what? Today is December 19th, 2017. That means it's D-Day for the tax bill. The tax bill will be passed for better or for worse. For some, it's definitely worse. For others, for many others, it's definitely better. Hey, as always, be part of the show. Your voice, we want to hear from you. Just email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Twitter feed, which is getting pretty active, is @KerryLutz. So the question is taxes, escalating debt. What does it all mean? Well, Jeffrey Small's with us. You've heard him here many times. President of Arbor Financial just released a new book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. In fact, it was just released last week. Hey, Jeff, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be here, Kerry.
So, debt and taxes. Usually they say death and taxes, but I think debt and taxes. Where are we?
That's a new cliche. Well, hey, listen, we're at $13 trillion, the largest debt we've ever had as a nation from a consumer's perspective for mortgages, corporate leverage, student loans, and auto and credit cards. We've hit a new epic point in the debt cycle, a new peak.
New peak. And, you know, the way the monetary system's set up, though, we never want to see debt go down. We can't. When we see debt go down in the country and the world, or even if its rate of creation slows down, we instantly see a financial collapse or a recession. So we got to have debt.
Well, you're right. We are debt dependent, but just like the markets, debt runs its own cycle. And so what ends up happening, if we go back to use the 08-09 credit collapse, the mortgage real estate collapse, we ended up with too much debt and we couldn't service it. And so when we get to a point where we've got too much debt and we don't have enough income to service it, that's when that debt bubble has a tendency to pop, hence a recession or something worse.
And that reminds me of my grandfather. He had an 8th grade education, came to this country when he was like 5 or 6 on a boat from Eastern Europe. And he used to say, and he was quite successful in business, when you are paying interest on interest, you got a problem. And the government, the U.S., is basically paying interest on interest, isn't it?
Well, they really are. You know, we're not really reducing the debt. We're not paying anything towards principal, really. It's just a great paper chase. It's a way to reinvigorate global economics and for us to spend more. But, you know, there's 3 ways to grow the economy, Kerry. You can expand credit across the board, which we've done, or you can create employment and expand the labor force, which is shrinking, by the way. The labor force participation is shrinking. Or the government can spend more money. And, you know, the government's tried that, and it doesn't really trickle down or work very well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Well, maybe under Trump, employment's perhaps stabilized. It looked like the workforce participation rate had increased slightly the last report, but we know that the U1 unemployment, which is down to like near record lows, has been manipulated and made completely unreliable as an indicator of economic activity.
Not according to the Fed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I believe everything they say, don't you?
Oh, of course not.
It's a joke. I mean, and Trump, as candidate Trump, ran against the cooked statistics, too. Remember that? He said that unemployment's much worse than the number the Fed was regurgitating.
Well, there's no doubt, and it was. And so for 8 years, our labor force shrunk under Obama, despite the gains in employment. We had less people in 2015 and 16 working than we did in 2008 as a nation. And so hopefully it looks like that's going to change. But, you know, there's things working against it, Kerry, like secular demographics. We have a lot of people retiring out of the workforce, and we have probably the worst generation in history to replace them, the millennials.
Hey, don't say bad things about my kids.
Hey, I got kids in that age range too now. Even my kids will tell me, Dad, this is the worst generation ever.
Yeah, well, the only encouraging thing is that Generation Z, the generation after them, really look like they have their heads screwed on much better, you know? So we can only hope. So we got this debt, this insane debt boom. It's a debt bubble. I mean, really, when you get down to it. And then we've got the tax cut coming. Does the tax cut make the debt bubble worse? Or does the tax cut actually empower you, Jeff? You're going to hire another analyst because you're going to save all this money. You're going to do things. I'll do things to invest. I'll buy another computer since I can write it off the day I get it. What effect's it going to have?
Well, in its simplest form, the metrics of the stock market will change. It'll benefit the big companies in the markets, in the stock markets. The Dow components, the top NASDAQ and S&P components will benefit because their metrics will look better. Now their bottom line just got a little bit better. And then two, it'll save the average consumer. If you're making $75,000 a year, making $1 million a year, you're going to save 4 to 7% off your tax bill, depending upon what your situation is. And so if it comes through that way, the way it's projected to, because I know it passed the House already today. I don't know where we are in the whole process at this point, but today is D-Day for passing the tax legislation. So that's going to be the economic impact that we'll see. And of course, it'll stimulate more merger and acquisition activity. It'll stimulate, more markets to the stock-based companies to spend more money on corporate buybacks. But as far as getting back to your original point, Kerry, on hiring, that really remains to be seen. I don't see how the tax plan really incentivizes companies to hire people other than the Make America Great Again theme. And there are companies relocating and there are companies investing more than ever before. But that's going to take some time to, come to a level of benefit. It's not going to happen in one day.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think, though, that it might very well turn out better than you think as far as small companies hiring, because it is a dramatic cut for many, many smaller businesses. And I think it could be just the thing that jumpstarts new business formation in the country. I think of that because it's a feeling. I think you go into business for a number of reasons. You know it, I know it, but really you got to be somewhat optimistic to go into business, start your own business, defy the odds, right? So
sure.
Is this the shot in the arm that new business formation needs? I don't have the answer. I guess I'm asking you.
I think it's a really nice complement to that, and it enhances the potential for a business to survive and to mature and get to a level of profitability. That combined with all of the deregulation could be a really nice kicker to the free market system of small businesses, because small businesses really are 60% of the economy. Mm-hmm. They also do most of the new hirings for folks. So, that's a part that I kind of left off the table here, Kerry. I'm glad that you brought it up because it's a really good area to discuss. And I think that if anything is going to benefit the growth of small business and the growth of employment in the small business sector, it's going to be the tax cuts combined with the deregulation. Because what really has inhibited companies from not just being profitable, from being overtaxed, but also the regulation components, and Trump being the greatest deregulator in the history of the presidency. In 1 year, he's canceled out more regulations than ever.
1,575. 1,575 to be precise. I just read it today.
Yeah, that's just a crazy number. I mean, we have this natural impairment that occurs, and, we don't want to go back to the mentality of, well, you didn't create that, so. Yeah,
you didn't build it. You didn't build it.
You didn't build it.
What a bunch of, hey, well, I'm going to reserve my expletives for a happier occasion. But, that is, everybody says, like it reminds me of the movie Full Metal Jacket. Men will live and die, but the core is forever. Men will live and die, but the government is forever, which means the regulations just increase. They never decrease. The government is the government. And you know what? We're learning something here, aren't we? We're learning that where there's a will, you can fire lawyers, basically. Right? You can get rid of lawyers where there's a will. We always, as a recovering attorney, we'd always say where there's a will, there's a lawyer. But here, he's getting rid of the lawyers. And you know what else you saw, Jeff? You've seen federal employment go down anywhere from 3,000 to 13,000 workers. Now, when was the last time you saw the feds get rid of people?
Honestly, was during the Clinton administration.
Yeah.
They reduced government expenditures in an increasing growing economy, and it's a very similar environment that we have now. However, we don't have this tech boom, and so we really haven't had a huge economic boom. We just have the people being optimistic and wanting to spend money and invest and hire because we have a pro-growth person in the White House. And that's, to the contrary of what the media says. But I mean, it's really, what do you attribute consumer confidence being so high? Why is there investor optimism at the highest point ever, since 2007 and 1999, investor optimism at its highest point. So, people are excited to spend money again because of what's happening. So we've got somebody that's changed the psychology of business in this country.
Yeah, it's really true. It's a good thing to see. And it is meaningful. This isn't just gobbledygook or hope and change. This is some things have really happened here that make a difference. And I just wonder if look, Jeff, if there's the slightest resurgence in the Rust Belt, in those Brexit states that gave Trump the election, I'm talking Michigan, Ohio, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which isn't really Midwestern, but part of it kind of is. If there's the slightest bit of economic resurgence in those states, he's going to win again.
Yeah, I suspect as long as the economy is going strong and the markets don't grow, if we have 4 years of the bull run continues in the markets, even though we're at 9 years now, approaching 9 years, if we have 4 more years of that, I suspect he will get elected. And especially if the Mueller investigation comes out. And really, the greatest threat to the markets going forward, Kerry, really is the Mueller investigation in the next 12 months. If we had a constitutional crisis and he went after Trump, I think that would completely ruin the psychology of business, and consumer sentiment would drop right off the grid.
Well, you see every time there's a headline, Jeff, like even when it's fake news, like Flynn's going to testify that the candidate Trump told him to talk to the Russians, and the market goes down 350 points in a day, and all hell breaks loose. And then it's like, oh no, that wasn't true. Then it comes back. So because what do you have? In the end, it all comes down to psychology, right? And I don't think anyone feels like President Pence is going to be nearly as pro-business as Trump. He's a wild card. Nobody knows what to think about him. And that's a big deal.
Well, Pence did a really good job in Indiana, but he's a traditional conservative Republican that believes in less government, lower taxes, and greater economic benefits. So, I mean, he would keep the party going, but I don't think people would be as enthusiastic psychologically from a business perspective because, let's face it, I mean, the economy has a psychology to it. The stock markets are rational, but the economy has a psychology to it. And that psychology can be influenced for the negative or the positive. And so, for some reason, Trump's got the Midas touch on influencing the psychology to the positive.
Because he gets this. I mean, this is why he's president, which many of you don't understand why or how he got elected. I got it from the get-go. I will tell you that. When I saw him speak at Freedom Fest 3 weeks after he announced, when he took the infamous escalator ride down the street, down the Trump Tower, I knew at that moment when I saw him that he was going to win. And it's because he has this inherent grasp of things about what really matters to you, what the important things are. And, for most of you out there, it's not a question of ideology or anything else. It's really the bread and butter economic issues. So you think overall tax cut net positive?
Oh, there's no doubt it's going to be positive. Now, the media is going to spin it to be negative, and the liberals are going to spin it to be negative. But it can only help the economy. It's not going to hurt it. And it's not, it's only $500 billion a year. It's not some ginormous, enormous, tax package. But it's only $500 billion a year. So we're going to recapture that through GDP growth. If we average 1% additional growth the next 4 to 6 years, that pretty much pays for the tax plan itself. And so I think it's going to end up being a wash. It keeps the stock market going up. It helps consumers, and ultimately there will be some reinvesting in our country from some of these results. But we just have to wait and see what they're going to be.
Hey, and one other thing, Jeff, we see housing taken off. Home builders at an 18-year high. It's like their opinion of the future. Is that going to continue on here? Housing going to keep going? Because that means housing goes, debt goes with it, right?
Well, the expansion of debt does. And so the reality is we were at a housing start low last December. We're up 12% in new starts, which is an epic move. Anything over 10% is kind of epic. So we're 12% higher in housing starts today than we were last year. And so we really haven't had an economic boom in real estate. And I expect that to continue as the demand for real estate keeps increasing. And, we're at this peak again in real estate prices, so to speak. So we do need new homes being built because there haven't been enough being built. And so that will continue.
Well, and then we got the millennials. They got to step up to the plate and start buying homes, but they're laden. Many of you millennials are laden with enormous amounts of debt from your, whether it was wisely undertaken college pursuits and graduate school or unwisely, you're still stuck with the debt.
Well, that's true, but unfortunately, that's kind of college is a business, and it costs a lot of money to go to school between tuition and living expenses and everything else in between. And so a lot of the kids that don't have money have to finance that. And unfortunately, the college lending business is you got 20 years to pay it back. And, we'll give you the money, but you're going to own your debt forever. And so it's kind of like going down to the docks and borrowing money. You're just not paying as much interest.
I think I'm going to start a new college funding entity called the Merchants of Venice Higher Education Funding. And, we'll just have like a butcher scale there, and we'll take our pound of flesh. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're selling your soul when you undertake this enormous college debt. Now, granted, if you're going to be in artificial intelligence and you come out to the Space Coast here in Florida, they'll pay you $300,000 to $400,000 a year out of college. Aeronautical engineer, probably $100K. So there's some justification. But when you are doing puppetry, probably not as wise an investment, is it?
It really depends. As long as you don't overdo it. The problem is they give these kids access to too much money. And so, you've got to find a way to minimize the amount of debt that you got to have. But, for the kids that don't have the economic power from their family to assist, the only way they can get ahead is to get an education. And so the labor force requires now a college degree. And so there's not much chance for vocational stuff or, for being a laborer to have a decent rate of pay to be able to buy a house and have a family. You can't do that anymore. It doesn't work out like that anymore. So you got to get an education.
There's a huge number of factory blue-collar jobs open that nobody wants that pay $75,000 a year or more. A pipe fitter, $75,000 to start. So it's often overlooked. But going back, if you want to go to college, look, like I raised my kids, I really didn't want them to work in a factory. If they wanted to, and if they love manufacturing, I wouldn't have stood in their way, but it was never really a consideration. So you want to get the best possible education for the lowest cost, lowest possible price. First thing you do is you go to a community college. And, if you're good in high school, you take AP courses. AP courses can actually raise your GPA, and they will be good for college credit. So you take as many AP courses as you can in high school, if you're there. Then you go to community college, and community college, even though it's only 2 years to get your associate's degree, you still can overload credits. And credits, sometimes community colleges cost next to nothing. They're extremely cheap. Overload your credits there and then go to a state school. All state schools must accept credits from the community colleges. So you could be down to like less than a year and a half in the state school, and you go to the best state school you can go to. In New York State, like Binghamton University was near Ivy League, very hard to get into. But if you got the grades, and then you only got to go for a year and a half. At New York was like $10,000 a year. The last I heard, maybe $13,000. I don't remember exactly. But state colleges are a fraction of the private schools. And you can get that superior education and really wind up where you want to be for a much lower cost than hawking your soul to the Merchant of Venice College Funding Corp. Well,
you've got really great insight into that, Kerry. And I guess there are some jobs vocationally that you can get that are decent, but you've got to go to different locations, I guess, across the country and find those. But I guess there is still ways to make some money without a college degree.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talk to this guy, Lou Weiss at Manufacturing Talk Radio. And basically, these big companies, manufacturing companies, are dying for workers. They can't get them. You go into any auto factory, you look at the guys there, they either have gray hair or no hair. I mean, there's just, and look, baby boomers, 10,000 a day retiring. So some of them are coming from manufacturing, which is opening up a lot of jobs, but they're only providing something like 3,000 a day to that sector. So something to be said for it, if that's your bent, if you will. So, Jeff, anyway, just tell us, where can we find your book?
Well, my book is a #1 best-selling rating right now on Amazon, but they can go right to Amazon and buy it direct. It's called Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. It has a website called financialplanningrightside.up.com, but Amazon is the best place to go.
Well, that's really exciting that you have a #1 bestseller. Wish you the best of luck, Jeff. Hey, be part of the show. Write us any questions for Jeff. or myself, KL@KerryLutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. We try to cover some irreverent, funny economic situations that invariably arise in our crazy economy. Jeff, we will definitely talk to you again soon. Thanks so much for coming on. Great luck with the book.
Thank you so much, Kerry. We'll talk to you soon.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival